Hello, thoughtful Libra. Across August 28 and 29, a quieter kind of clarity begins asking for your attention. You may have been carrying a sense that something in your life is slightly out of alignment, even if you cannot immediately explain what it is. Perhaps you have considered every angle, listened to every opinion, tried to understand everyone involved, and still found yourself wondering where you truly stand. That uncertainty does not mean you have lost your direction. It may simply mean you are ready to stop choosing only from what keeps everyone else comfortable and start listening more honestly to yourself. Sometimes the hardest part for you is not finding an option, but accepting that every choice will create a different outcome. You can see the value in both sides, understand another person's perspective, and still hesitate because you do not want your decision to create tension. Yet there comes a point when keeping everything perfectly balanced begins to cost you something. These days invite you to step back from the noise, breathe, and notice which expectations actually belong to you. You do not have to solve every disagreement, carry every emotion in the room, or make yourself smaller simply because you know how to keep the peace. Your sense of harmony is one of your strengths, Libra, but harmony means something different when it is chosen freely. There is a difference between meeting someone halfway and continually moving your own side of the bridge so the other person never has to move at all. If you have been feeling mentally scattered, consider whether too many voices have been receiving equal weight in a decision that ultimately belongs to you. Give yourself room to think without immediately asking what everyone else will think. A quiet walk, a creative practice, an honest conversation, or simply some uninterrupted time alone can help you hear the preference beneath all the careful reasoning. You may also notice that your need for certainty has become part of what keeps you waiting. You might want to know that a decision is completely right before you make it, that a relationship will respond exactly as you hope, or that a professional choice will lead somewhere worthwhile before you take the first step. But life rarely offers that kind of guarantee. Sometimes clarity arrives after you choose, not before. Instead of asking yourself whether you can predict every consequence, ask whether the choice in front of you feels honest, sustainable, and aligned with the person you are becoming. Lately, something may have felt slower than you expected. You have invested time, thought, effort, and perhaps more emotional consideration than anyone else realizes. Yet the result has not moved at the same pace. It can be frustrating when you have carefully adjusted every detail and still cannot make something happen. But this is where you are being asked to loosen your grip on the outcome without abandoning your responsibility for the choices you can make. You do not have to force a door open simply because you have already spent so long standing in front of it. There may be an opportunity to approach a familiar situation differently, and it may not arrive in the dramatic form you imagined. It could begin with a conversation you have been postponing, a decision you have been circling, or a willingness to say what you actually need instead of offering the answer that sounds easiest. Growth here comes through participation, not passive waiting. You do not need perfect certainty before moving forward. You need enough self-trust to recognize when continuing to hesitate is no longer protecting you. And when something does not go according to plan, try not to interpret it immediately as proof that you chose badly. Some disruptions reveal information you could not have seen beforehand. A difficult conversation may show you where the relationship has become uneven. A professional complication may reveal that your priorities need to be renegotiated. A delayed result may give you time to notice whether you genuinely wanted the outcome or simply wanted the reassurance of having everything settled. What matters is not avoiding every uncomfortable turn, but learning how to respond without abandoning yourself in the process. Your time and emotional energy are valuable, Libra. You have a natural ability to consider what other people need, but that ability can become exhausting when you automatically place their comfort beside your own and then treat both as equally negotiable. Pay attention to the relationships and situations where you are always the one adjusting, explaining, forgiving, waiting, or smoothing things over. If something continually asks you to silence your needs in order to preserve the appearance of harmony, it may be time to reconsider what balance actually means. This is where boundaries become less about pushing people away and more about telling the truth about where you stand. You can care deeply and still say no. You can understand someone's perspective without agreeing to carry their expectations. You can love someone and still recognize that a particular pattern between you has stopped being healthy. Your growth is not asking you to become colder or more rigid. It is asking you to become clearer about what deserves your energy and what leaves you feeling as though you have disappeared inside the effort to keep everything peaceful. Across these 2 days, let yourself notice where your self-worth has become connected to being agreeable, useful, admired, or easy to be around. You do not have to earn your place in someone's life by endlessly accommodating them. The more honestly you recognize your own values, the easier it becomes to make choices without constantly looking outside yourself for permission. Your strength is not only in your ability to create harmony between people, it is also in your ability to create a life that feels harmonious from the inside. There is also something important about how you relate to progress right now. You may be closer to a goal than you realize, but that does not mean you need to rush toward it simply because the finish line has become visible. When you sense that something is finally moving, excitement can make you overlook the details that matter. Stay attentive to what you are building rather than becoming consumed by how it will look once everyone else notices. Your actions are already revealing your value more clearly than any outside approval could. If something you have worked toward begins to take shape, allow yourself to feel proud without needing everyone around you to respond in the same way. Some people may celebrate openly, while others may be occupied with their own struggles, responsibilities, or private emotions. Their reaction does not determine the worth of what you have accomplished. You can share your happiness without turning it into a test of who supports you, and you can remain generous without needing your success to be validated by every person who has witnessed your journey. This is especially important if your progress involves a relationship, career decision, financial goal, or personal change. You may naturally want to bring people together and make sure everyone feels included, but not every moment of growth requires unanimous agreement. Sometimes the healthiest form of balance is allowing different people to stand in different places while you remain honest about where you are choosing to stand. Your path does not become less meaningful simply because someone else needs more time to understand it. As August 28 and 29 unfold, keep returning to the quiet question underneath everything. Are you creating peace because it genuinely reflects what you want? Or are you preserving peace because you are afraid of what might happen if you finally tell the truth? You may discover that the clarity you have been searching for was never completely absent. It may have been waiting beneath all the opinions, possibilities, expectations, and careful calculations for you to decide which voice deserves to become your own. And perhaps that is the deeper lesson here, Libra. You do not need to become harder in order to protect yourself. And you do not need to stop caring in order to choose yourself. You are learning that real balance is not a perfectly still scale. It is the ability to notice when something has shifted and respond before you lose your center. The more honestly you honor your own needs while respecting the people around you, the more naturally your relationships, decisions, and ambitions can begin to reflect the person you are becoming. So give yourself permission to pause before answering, but do not confuse reflection with endless postponement. Listen carefully, choose consciously, and let your actions carry the clarity that your mind has been searching for. There is a quiet strength in knowing when to compromise, when to speak, when to wait, and when to finally take your own side. And as you begin to recognize that distinction more clearly, you may realize that the balance you have been looking for was never about keeping everything around you perfectly. Even it was about learning where you belong within the life you are creating. And while you are moving toward greater clarity, Libra, remember that balance has to include your body and your everyday life as well. Rest, nourishment, and quiet moments matter just as much as the goals you are pursuing, because the life you are building needs to be sustainable, not simply impressive from the outside. Across August 28 and 29, your energy may feel less like a dramatic wave and more like a scale slowly finding its center, asking you to notice where you have been giving too much, carrying too much, or leaving too little room for yourself. For you, the deeper question is not whether you can understand what everyone else needs. You usually can. The more important question is whether you are giving your own needs an equal place at the table, especially when a decision could disappoint someone or disturb an arrangement that has looked peaceful on the surface. The star appears as a symbol of renewed clarity, hope, and emotional honesty after a period in which you may have questioned what you truly wanted. Rather than asking you to wait for a perfect sign, this card encourages you to become honest about the direction that feels quietly right within you. The star can also speak to healing through perspective. Sometimes the heart becomes tired not because you lack love, but because you have spent too long trying to make every relationship, expectation, and possibility fit together perfectly. You may be learning that vulnerability does not mean explaining yourself endlessly or keeping every door open. Sometimes it means admitting what matters to you and allowing another person to respond to the truth of it. Let this symbolism remind you that clarity can arrive when you stop performing harmony and begin creating a more honest kind of peace. Then the Wheel of Fortune enters, bringing movement into places that may have felt suspended. For Libra, this changing wheel can represent a shift in circumstances, but just as importantly, it can represent a change in the way you respond to circumstances. You may realize that what once felt like an unavoidable compromise was actually a choice you kept making because it preserved familiarity. As these 2 days unfold, stay flexible enough to recognize when an old arrangement has served its purpose and when a different balance is asking to be created. The Magician follows with a very different kind of message. Awareness becomes useful only when you do something with it. You already have the ability to communicate, negotiate, create, organize, and bring an idea into a form that others can understand. But hesitation can scatter those strengths when you keep waiting for every variable to feel perfectly settled. This card encourages you to move from considering every possible response to choosing the response that reflects your actual priorities. In relationships especially, that could mean saying what you need plainly, asking the question you have been avoiding, or taking a small practical step instead of remaining at the edge of the situation and imagining every possible outcome. There is also a warning here. For Libra, your ability to see several sides can become exhausting when every side receives equal authority. You do not have to dismiss another person's perspective in order to honor your own. The real balance comes from being able to listen without disappearing, compromise without resentment, and remain considerate without making someone else's comfort the permanent measure of your decisions. The Four of Wands then brings the focus back to connection, belonging, and the foundations you are creating with other people. This is not simply a picture of celebration or an ideal relationship. It can represent the kind of environment where both people are allowed to feel secure, respected, and genuinely seen. If you are in a relationship, notice whether the connection has room for honest conversation or whether you have been smoothing over small tensions because you would rather preserve the appearance of peace. Sometimes the strongest foundation is built when two people can tell the truth and still choose to meet each other halfway. If you are single, the Four of Wands can speak to your desire for something stable without asking you to settle for something merely comfortable. You may be becoming more aware of the difference between chemistry and compatibility, between being wanted and being understood, between keeping someone close and actually feeling safe enough to be yourself around them. A meaningful connection does not require you to constantly adjust your shape to fit another person. It should leave enough space for both people to stand fully within the relationship. The Emperor brings structure to the reading. And for Libra, that structure is especially important because harmony without boundaries can become imbalance disguised as kindness. This card asks you to decide where your limits are, what standards you are willing to uphold, and which commitments genuinely deserve your energy. Strength here does not have to look harsh or controlling. It can be as simple as knowing what you will accept, communicating it calmly, and following through when your own boundaries are tested. When it comes to your health, the message is less about one specific physical area and more about the rhythm of your daily life. If you've been allowing social obligations, work demands, or other people's needs to fill every available space, your body may be asking for a quieter pace through ordinary signs of fatigue or tension. Give yourself regular time to eat, rest, move, breathe, and step away from constant interaction, because emotional balance becomes much harder to maintain when your basic needs are repeatedly pushed aside. You do not need to turn self-care into another standard. You have to perform perfectly. The point is to create a routine that supports you rather than another list of expectations that makes you feel behind. Notice what genuinely restores you, what leaves you depleted, and where you keep saying yes simply because saying no feels uncomfortable. That awareness can become one of the most practical forms of balance available to you. In your work life, you may find yourself reconsidering how your time, effort, and abilities are being valued. Rather than focusing on whether someone above you approves of everything you are doing, pay attention to the actual exchange. Are your responsibilities, recognition, compensation, and expectations reasonably aligned? If feedback arrives, listen carefully without immediately treating it as rejection. But also do not assume that every criticism must be accepted without question. Your task is to separate useful information from unnecessary self-doubt, then decide what deserves adjustment and what simply asks you to stand more firmly behind your value. You may also notice that your attention has been divided between too many priorities. When your personal life, relationships, ambitions, and obligations are all asking for consideration at once, it becomes easy to keep weighing everything without choosing what deserves your clearest commitment. Use these 2 days to bring those priorities back into view, because the more honestly you understand what matters to you, the easier it becomes to make decisions that feel balanced rather than merely agreeable. And if there is no real reason to take criticism personally, let it remain information rather than turning it into a judgment about your worth. Listen, learn what is useful, make the adjustment that genuinely serves you, and then keep moving. If you are looking for work, the waiting may have tested your patience, but a delay does not automatically mean you are falling behind. Sometimes a door stays closed because the room behind it would have asked you to become smaller than you needed to be. Perhaps a position you wanted would have offered security but very little room to grow, or perhaps the role itself was simply out of alignment with what you value now. This is a good time to look beyond the most obvious path. Reconnect with abilities you have allowed to sit unused, and consider whether something you could build yourself deserves more attention. You do not have to wait indefinitely for someone else to recognize your potential before you begin using it. Sometimes the bridge forward starts with one practical decision to stop standing at the gate and begin creating your own route across. When it comes to finances, the theme is less about a sudden stroke of luck and more about becoming clearer about what is actually worth your time, money, and effort. Across August 28 and 29, you may find yourself looking differently at an arrangement, expense, investment, or financial priority that previously seemed straightforward. The Wheel of Fortune can symbolize changing circumstances, but for Libra, its deeper message is adaptability. When conditions shift, you have permission to reconsider the choice instead of remaining loyal to it simply because you made it before. The star brings another layer of perspective, encouraging you to separate genuine value from appearances and temporary reassurance. You may be learning that financial stability is not only about having more, it is also about knowing what deserves your resources and what quietly consumes them without giving enough back. The magician then turns awareness into action, reminding you that an idea becomes useful when you give it structure, communicate it clearly, and take practical steps toward making it real. Your creativity can work alongside discipline here, especially when you stop waiting for perfect certainty and begin making decisions from a clearer understanding of your priorities. The Four of Wands supports the idea of building something that can actually last, whether that involves collaborative work, a carefully considered investment, or a financial arrangement that gives you greater peace of mind. The Emperor adds structure, asking you to look at the systems behind your decisions rather than relying only on how something feels in the moment. Together, these symbols point toward a healthier relationship with resources. Enjoy what you can, invest thoughtfully, and make sure the foundations beneath your choices are strong enough to support the life you're trying to create. And when it comes to love, Libra, this is where the question of balance becomes especially personal. When you are absorbed in your own goals or trying to create stability elsewhere in your life, it can be surprisingly easy to assume that a relationship is fine simply because there has been no obvious conflict. But quiet distance can exist beneath a peaceful surface, and sometimes the person beside you is not asking for a grand gesture. They are asking to feel included, heard, and considered. if you sense that something has shifted, slow down enough to have a real conversation, rather than trying to solve the feeling alone in your head. Ask questions, say what you have been holding back, and give the other person enough space to answer without immediately preparing your next response. A simple meal together, a walk without distractions, or an unhurried conversation can create room for the connection to breathe again. For you, intimacy may become less about finding the perfect words and more about allowing both people to be honest without having to protect the relationship from every uncomfortable truth. And if you are single, your challenge may be less about recognizing attraction and more about deciding what you are willing to do with it. You may notice a possibility that has been sitting quietly at the edge of your awareness, yet part of you keeps analyzing what could happen, what the other person might think, or whether choosing differently could lead to disappointment. At some point, consideration has to become experience. Otherwise, you can spend so much time evaluating the doorway that you never discover what is on the other side. That does not mean rushing into something simply because there is chemistry. It means allowing yourself to participate instead of remaining a spectator in your own emotional life. A conversation, an invitation, or a small expression of interest can tell you more than another week of imagining every possible outcome. The important thing is to remember that making a choice does not require absolute certainty. Sometimes clarity arrives because you finally give yourself permission to take one honest step. Family relationships also carry a theme of rebalancing. You may become more aware of where old misunderstandings have shaped the way people speak to one another, or where you have quietly taken responsibility for maintaining peace that should really belong to everyone involved. The star encourages openness and a willingness to see family dynamics with fresh eyes, while the Wheel of Fortune suggests that relationships can change when one person chooses to respond differently instead of repeating an old pattern. The Magician reminds you that harmony is something people participate in creating, not something one person should have to manufacture alone. You can communicate with care, acknowledge shared history, and make room for another person's perspective without surrendering your own. The Four of Wands brings the possibility of warmer connection through genuine presence, while the Emperor reminds you that closeness and boundaries can exist together. You can love your family deeply and still decide where your responsibility ends, allowing relationships to become more mutual rather than built around one person constantly keeping everything balanced. As for your energy, you may feel a stronger desire to act, organize, and move something forward, but remember that momentum becomes useful only when it has direction. Rest is not the opposite of progress, and stepping away for a moment does not mean you have lost your place. Sometimes you need to leave the noise of competing priorities long enough to hear which decision actually deserves your attention. Pay attention to small signs of exhaustion, especially if you have been saying yes too often simply because you do not want to disappoint anyone. The constructive opportunity across August 28 and 29 is to choose rather than endlessly weigh. If there is a project, conversation, application, idea, or personal decision you have been circling around, give it a clear next step instead of demanding that you understand the entire path first. At the same time, be careful of swinging between overexcitement and complete withdrawal. Neither extreme needs to make the decision for you. Your strength here is the middle ground, where reflection informs action, and action gives reflection something real to work with. For students, your ability to notice different perspectives can become one of your greatest advantages, but only if you remain willing to hear perspectives that challenge your own. Leadership does not require you to have the strongest voice in every room, and intelligence is not diminished when someone else offers an idea you had not considered. Give yourself permission to listen without treating every disagreement as something you must resolve immediately. Real learning happens when curiosity remains stronger than the need to be right, because what you understand deeply tends to stay with you far longer than information memorized simply to complete an assignment. As for compatibility, the three signs highlighted here can each bring something meaningful into your Libra experience. Gemini may help you open up through conversation, curiosity, and a willingness to explore different possibilities without becoming trapped in overthinking. Their quick, adaptable energy can remind you that not every decision has to be treated like a permanent crossroads. And sometimes talking honestly about what you feel is enough to reveal which direction feels right. Aquarius brings a different kind of understanding through independence, perspective, and intellectual connection. Their presence may encourage you to step outside the expectations of others and ask yourself what you actually believe, want, and value. With Aquarius, you may discover that a healthy relationship does not require constant agreement. Sometimes two people can honor their differences while still choosing to understand and respect one another. And then there is Leo, who can bring warmth, confidence, and a more direct expression of affection into your world. Their energy may encourage you to stop minimizing your desires simply to keep everything comfortable for everyone else. Through this connection, you may learn that being honest about what you want is not selfish, and that real harmony becomes much easier to create when both people are willing to show up openly, take up space, and let themselves be fully seen. Libra, thank you sincerely for spending this time with me and allowing yourself to slow down enough to listen inwardly. I hope these reflections have given you something meaningful to consider, especially if they helped you notice where you may be searching for harmony while quietly setting aside your own needs. Take whatever genuinely resonates with you, leave behind anything that does not, and let your own judgment remain at the center of every choice you make. If something in this reading brought you a moment of clarity or made you see a relationship, decision, or personal situation from a different angle, I'd love for you to leave a like. That small gesture helps this message reach more people who may be looking for a thoughtful space to reflect. And it also supports the continued creation of these readings. If you would like to stay connected and receive more reflections, guidance, and astrology-inspired messages, you can subscribe and turn on notifications so you could be part of this growing community. Thank you again for being here, Libra, and for bringing your own perspective, experiences, and questions into this space. As you move forward, remember that balance does not mean keeping everyone satisfied or making every choice perfectly. Sometimes it simply means giving your own truth the same consideration you so naturally give to everyone else. May you carry that clarity with you, one honest choice at a time.